right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Solution Provider Showcase, Plate to Planet Solutions for Restaurant Food Waste. My name is Angel Vessa, and I will be one of your hosts for this session. Also joining me is my co-host, Selena Mao, in the back. Give a big wave. Hey, thanks, Selena. So this is the first time we've ever actually done a Solution Provider Showcase at the annual summit. And our goal is to share with all of you promising food waste solutions and initiatives and really dig into how they work and what their impact can be. And so today we're going to be hearing from 3 fantastic solution providers that offer convenient, affordable, and scalable solutions that empower restaurants to cut waste without sacrificing profitability or quality. And so after each presentation, there's actually going to be a discussion with 2 judges who are going to be assessing the solutions today. Joining us are Annie Boyo, who is leading the product pillar of Toast.org, the philanthropic arm of Toast. He manages a team of talented toasters in building products that are uniquely positioned to create countless moments of impact and leverage Toast's scale to help restaurants tackle food insecurity, promote sustainability, and boost employee prosperity. Also joining us is Martin Flusburn. He is a partner at Clean Energy Venture Group, which invests in clean tech, and he's been involved in mentoring with groups like the Clean Tech Open. Throughout his career, Martin has started, built, and successfully sold multiple companies. His most recent company addressed energy and water management, food safety, and food waste in the food service and retail sectors. Let's give them a round of applause. We're really glad that they're here with us today. All right, so now, once we've heard from all the presenters, we're going to open the floor to Q&A with all of you, so keep those questions. And then the judges are going to announce the winning solution, kind of based on set criteria. We're going to be looking at things like the problem that these solutions are trying to solve, the solution's unique competitive advantage, its ability to be replicated or scaled, as well as its environmental and social impact. I should note that this is not a pitch competition. There is no money involved, and all of these solutions that you'll be hearing about today are fantastic. They're 3 of many that are out there. Again, we just really want you to get in the minds of subject matter experts, funders, and other founders, and critically think about these solutions. So, without further ado, I'm very excited to welcome up our first presenter, Jake Simon. He's the co-founder and CEO of Connected Fresh, where he combines his deep expertise in operational efficiency and a passion for sustainable innovation to lead the company's mission in transforming the food service industry through smart sensor technology. Jake, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. I am going to talk pretty fast. But happy to answer any questions at the end here. So I know it's fairly common, a lot of you might be operators or operating refrigerators and things like that, and how many times have you gotten that phone call that sounds like a prank, but it's actually, is your refrigerator running, right? That is something that people are thinking about all the time in this industry, right? And what we're imagining, right, is a centralized platform that easily allows you to connect that physical world to the digital world through the use of off-the-shelf scalable sensors that are ready to go out of the box, right? So we're focused on identifying issues as soon as or even before they occur with machine learning to be able to prevent challenges across operations, food safety, food waste, facilities, and more. So with this, right, you have one platform where we're doing it from anywhere, anytime with software that's actually made to work with humans at the core of it. All right, so we are focused across, so this is focused on restaurants, right? But of course, you know, there's a lot to do with things outside of the restaurant footprint. But really what we're focused on is equipment issues, food safety and compliance incidents, and costly human errors. Things like manually taking those temperature logs. That person doesn't want to be doing it. It's not digitized, and best case scenario, you find out about it after it actually happens, or after, you know, there's an issue to deal with. So we're trying to focus on how can we decrease that food waste and decrease that operational cost having to do with that. So with that, right, we want to encourage these simple, effective solutions that are not just another big complex project, another login for another piece of software doing another thing, right? We want to be able to not only build these types of solutions, but allow it to be extremely flexible and adaptable in where that data goes, right? So it's not all about, hey, you have one platform, this is where all the data is. Sure, you have all of it there, but can you send it to a work order management platform to go open a ticket automatically? Can you send it to your corrective action system so people know the steps to take, and you can meet your teams where they are, right? Instead of forcing them to learn a new software doing another thing. And encouraging the scalability of being able to do it from a cost perspective, right? We're talking very low dollars for the actual hardware and then the monitoring to follow. All right, so at the end of the day, very, very easy scalable setup. So I brought a couple sensors here so you can see kind of the form factor of them, right? Temperature, automated fill levels, energy consumption monitoring, and more and more and more. Everything is ready to go out of the box. So as soon as the customer receives a package, right, they push a button sometimes they don't even need to push a button. It just is pre-configured, ready to go from day one. We are generating those automated AI insights using machine learning, and then the monitoring, of course, is 24/7, so you never have to worry after you close, is it going to be there correct when I get back? I myself and my co-founder, Tushar, who's also here, we were working together at Deloitte Consulting, basically building these types of real-time monitoring and predictive preventative maintenance systems for the industrial space. So automotive, industrial manufacturing, all this kind of stuff, and then ventured into the food side, right? And from there, we're able to use this expertise to be able to not only deliver these solutions that are working and are made for the end user, but we're also able to do it at a scale that doesn't matter if you're 5 locations, 5,000 locations, or much, much more. So want to talk about some of the solutions themselves. This is not an exhaustive list, and I'm not going to go through it all for time's sake, but we have temperature logging, so that automates that process, and that's for cold, frozen, hot holding, all that kind of stuff. You have fully automated cool down logs as well, right? You just stick a probe in something and you walk away. There's no system to interact with. It's just automatically making sure you get to checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, and if you don't, right, then obviously if we're able to prevent that from happening in the first place, that is food that is not wasted directly. Power consumption, doors, all this kind of stuff, and with the catalytic grant fund from ReFed, we're able to get into more of the waste tracking analytics and inventory management side, because how do you reduce something if you can't measure it in the first place? This is a quick overview. I know I'm running very low on time, but you have dashboards. It allows you to log in and be able to dive into the organization. And then we're able to receive alerts, email, text message, automated phone call based on different severities, and really, and then allowing that data to go elsewhere. For the sake of time, I'm just going to move on to the value side of it, right? Food waste reduction is fantastic. However, we need to be able to put an ROI on it, right? We're not just going to give you a bunch of data so you have a bunch of data points. We need to give you data that's actually going to solve a business challenge. So here you can see some of the ones that are highlighted here. But we're talking, everything from $1,000 to tens of thousands of dollars here. Hardware agnostic, my time is up, I'm going through fast. Hardware agnostic, being able to send it to any destination, and it doesn't really matter for us what the source of that sensor data is. And then just as a closing, any ways that you guys help us, that's my contact information there. If you want to recommend our solution to anyone, just throwing this out there for this group specifically, we do at or below cost deployments for nonprofits. So if you're a food bank or anything like that, right, we'll get this in there for as little as possible. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jake. That was great, even though Speedy is awesome. Martin, Annie, I want to hand it over to you all. I think you both have mics. Would love to hear your questions and feedback.
Oh, okay, can you hear me? Yeah. So in full transparency, my most recent company did a lot of those things, if not all of them. So I am familiar with this space. But I guess one question, excuse me, Jake. Okay. As you're aware, there are a number of companies doing this in the restaurant space. So how would you describe your advantages? What is it that you do that's different?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? Especially with the company that you're talking about, right? Not to name names necessarily, but one of the focuses is on, you guys were very in depth with that asset and able to take, is this even on? Okay. You're able to take data from the actual physical machines, right? There's a lot of implementation costs and a lot of coordination and programming that goes into being able to connect directly to a refrigerator or fryer, et cetera, right? With the sensors that we're using, they are off-the-shelf products that are meant to be, so anyone within the organization can it's pre-configured and they just place it, right? So the deployment is a huge area there. The second thing is that we're completely agnostic from the actual sensors themselves. We'll pre-configure, we have tons of different types of options because they all work around this central wireless technology that allows for it to, 5 to 10 years on a battery charge and be able to just deploy it without someone having to go set it up. So those kinds of things, and then the renewed focus on like data doesn't matter where it's coming from. It comes in, it's processed, you generate insights, and then it can also go elsewhere. That openness of being able to share data and put it in the right place and trigger those secondary actions is definitely not always the case.
Thank you.
Hey, great presentation. I'm pretty sure it's on. This is on. Sweet. Okay, cool. I've thoroughly enjoyed the last day of being at this conference because I've been able to talk to so many incredible organizations, food recoveries, and just inspiration and thoughts and stuff. And so it's clear that Connected Fresh gives operators this proactive superpower. I'll call it superpower, and maybe you can brand it that way. It's a superpower.
Sure, love it.
Superpower.
First one's free.
Yeah, first one's free. So just talk me through how, as you've talked to a lot of incredible food recovery agencies here, how you may want to think about, collaborating with them to potentially also share this data, so not just the operators like, oh shit, this is about to go. Sorry, excuse my language. I think everyone's.
It's not recorded, don't worry.
Everyone's like, I think everyone's of age, I hope. But you can say, okay, operator, you have this information. Here is a partner that you collaborate that has. Can you talk me through any of these ideas and stuff that you've thought through with food recovery agencies?
When you say partnerships, do you mean with those agencies, or do you mean external partners that they also use?
Both.
Okay.
Both. It could be both. That's you guys recommend one, or they already have one, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So exactly like you were saying, I have my own version of that tagline, right? We're trying to move people from being a reactive mindset of, hey, something went wrong, I need to take care of it, to being proactive about that issue. So being from reactive to proactive is kind of the mantra, right? And so how can we do that in all respects of that, right? So if you're a food bank and you receive food, right, and you're able to process it, you need to be able to respond to things very, very quickly. Otherwise, something that has taken so much coordination to be able to get there in the first place has to then be thrown away, right? Which is a massive issue, and we don't have to get into that, right? Where you extend that kind of from reactive to proactive is with these systems. Maybe there's a work order management system or the corrective action system or an internal knowledge base or anything like that, right? You're able to send this information and its trigger data to go marry it with other pieces of the organization. So if it hits a major or critical alert, go open a work order ticket, right? So that you don't then, here's an alert, send it to someone, and now they have to go take an action just to take another action, right? We're trying to, as much as possible, not just us, we're trying to, kind of change this mindset in this industry of data silos and walled gardens of data, right? And make sure the data gets exactly where it needs to be, because ultimately that's what's gonna allow that person to not just have another piece of software to deal with, it's actually gonna solve their problem with limited or no interaction.
No, do you have any more? No. Yeah, I thought it was a great presentation. When you only get two questions, you did something well. Yeah.
Well, let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
All right. So next up is Joe Robbins, the Senior Product Manager at Food Rescue US, where he excels in managing technical teams and leading product development from conception to release. And so his expertise lies in delivering value to both product users and stakeholders and creating impactful software solutions that address critical needs. Let's welcome up Joe.
Thank you, Angel, for that introduction. Thank you to ReFed for having me here. It's been a blast. I'm Joe. I'm the product manager at Food Rescue US. We're a nonprofit that combats hunger in local communities. And today I'm going to talk to you about how you can take advantage of our work in order to offset the costs of food waste generated by your business. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about why food waste is a problem. And I know you're all here at day 2 of a food waste summit. I'm assuming you've heard a little bit about this already. But in case you're new, 44 million people went hungry in the US last year, while uneaten food in landfills contribute almost 10% of our global greenhouse gas emissions. For restaurants, food waste also represents lost revenue. And despite the massive incentive for the private market to address these issues, the food service industry still generates 13 million tons of waste every single year. Now, I spent some time working in a restaurant myself, and I can tell you that despite everyone's best efforts, kitchens are naturally messy, chaotic places. Kitchen staff have to worry about their ticket times and prepping for their next rush, in addition to minimizing waste. If we can acknowledge that some level of surplus is likely inevitable, then the critical question becomes, how can surplus food avoid becoming wasted food? And that's where Food Rescue US steps in with a practical, scalable solution.
Food Rescue US is a national nonprofit on a dual mission to both reduce food insecurity and food waste. So we do that by leveraging a web-based app that helps coordinate volunteers in an effort to rescue surplus food from businesses that would otherwise throw it away. And instead, those volunteers take that food and deliver it to a nearby social service agency.
My name is Ada Rivera, and I'm the outreach coordinator here for the pantry. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week it's open, so anybody can come at any time. Most of our food comes from Food Rescue. This has been such a great thing. Thousands and thousands of pounds of food are saved every month, and it goes to good homes.
Food Rescue US plays a major part of this program. Budget-wise, we couldn't even begin to run this program without Food Rescue US.
As you can see, ours is a straightforward solution, but I don't want the simplicity to fool anyone. The impacts of our work have been profound. In 2023 alone, we conducted 118,000 individual food rescues, delivering 31 million meals to those in need, and preventing 27,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions in the process. Now, the data on the right of this screen is from one of our partners, a small, single-location pizza place in Washington, D.C. In addition to thousands of partnerships that look something like that one, Food Rescue US also rescues from major organizations and events like the Super Bowl and the Formula One Grand Prix in both Detroit and Miami. Now, in addition to this impact and scalability, I want to talk a little bit about what sets Food Rescue US apart from other waste solutions. First and foremost, our service is free, meaning that you can make progress towards your corporate sustainability goals and take advantage of significant tax incentives for donated food at no additional cost to your business. Now, I hesitate here to make a joke about a free lunch in front of a bunch of restaurant executives, but that's truly what a partnership with Food Rescue US can be. It's a way to do some good and save some money at no additional cost to your business. Now, as many of you know from running your own large organizations, simplicity scales. Our model's straightforward and efficient design is what allows us to work with anyone, from a small pizza place in DC to one of the largest sporting events on earth. And finally, our new donor link feature will integrate directly with your existing point of sale or inventory management system, reducing the amount of time you spend logging and storing your donations while you wait for pickup. Now, I've talked a little bit about the impact and the potential of Food Rescue US. I hope the question on everyone's mind is, how do I get involved? The answer to that is by scanning this QR code. You can sign up to be a volunteer or to start donating your surplus food to us today. And I'll leave you with this. Because we don't charge any of our partners for pickups and we don't charge any of our agencies for the food they receive, the only way we're able to continue doing the work that we do is through the generosity of folks like you right here in this room. If you're looking to invest in your community and invest in your environment, then I want you to know that for every dollar invested in Food Rescue US, we can deliver 16 meals to those in need. And if I wasn't up against the clock here, I would pause dramatically for that to sink in a little bit. But because that's not the case, I'll just say it again. For $1, we can feed 16 people with food that would otherwise be sitting in a landfill generating greenhouse gas emissions. That's the best deal you're going to hear about today. And with that, I thank you very much for your time. And I'm open for any questions you guys might have.
So, Joe, if I can ask you 3 questions in one.
Okay.
What percentage of your food supply that you get comes from the restaurant industry? Number 2, how do you convince the restaurant industry to give you the food? And then what's the basis they use to decide which food should go to you? How do they know what to give to you?
That's a good question. So the first part of that is, The first part of that is tricky. So probably about a third of the donors that we have are restaurants, catering companies, hotels in the food service industry. In terms of our volume, the percentage contributed by restaurants is probably closer to 15 or 20%, just because the average size of the donation tends to be smaller. In terms of the second part of your question, I think the value prop is clear. We don't charge. We have a volunteer show up. Any excess food you have, we take.
But how do they know it's excess food?
Well, that is a problem for the kitchen. I'm not sure, but they have excess food. There's a lot of solutions out there to track it and to see what's causing that. And I think there's a lot of attempts to eliminate that. I think our value proposition is for the food the waste that you're not able to eliminate fully because you have to worry about ticket times and quality and prepping and things like that. We can offset some of the costs of that by picking it up and dropping it to an agency that's, maybe 2 blocks away from you. So it's a community-based strategy that we've found works really well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Henny?
Back on. Hello. So probably most folks know I come from the point of sale side of restaurants. So I'm very, very personally invested in food rescue and trying to scale it. And so, Joe, as you're thinking about that scale, and obviously acknowledging that there are constraints on volunteering and that stuff, can you talk us through this? I've always been generally, when I've been approaching this space, it's like the supply and demand side. You're creating a marketplace. Can you talk me through how U.S. Food, so I have many questions, U.S. Food is thinking about that supply and demand, and what happens when the supply is there, but the demand, let's say, is not there for the pickups, and how do you help restaurants with that expectation? Because they're like, I wanted to donate this food, and now nobody can pick it up or it didn't go to the right place. So can you talk us through how y'all gonna do that expectation management? And
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, we have almost no problem recruiting receiving agencies. Receiving agencies need food. They have tiny budgets, very few paid staff. If we come with them with an offer for free food, that's an easy sell. The other thing is volunteers are also not a problem that we have. We actually have sites where volunteers will sign up, they're excited about it, they come to a meeting, and then they're waiting for a donation to open up. So the bottleneck really is on the food donor side, and this kind of streamlines that process. I think there's another element to your question that I don't remember.
No, so the second is you had said something along the lines of surplus is part of the business, and so that's another learning that we've actually come to terms with at Toast. It's maybe somebody heard me make this joke earlier. We call ourselves toasters. We do a lot of bread puns. So we say, restaurants bake excess into their inventory, pun intended. And so, let's hold aside the fact that this might be a consumer cultural thing, where we as consumers are conditioned to see full fridge, full stock, a full display as good. And so that's going to be a larger problem that I don't know if U.S. Foods or Toast or any stuff like that. But can you talk me through how you kind of walk restaurants through the options? Because not necessarily all the time a restaurant may want to donate their food. They may go down the composting route. They may go down the resale. And so because all three of you are presenting some really interesting things. So it's like a restaurant operator is here. And so, oh man, I have all this excess food. Which of you incredible people do I go and pick from? So just help I guess, myself and everyone else here just think through that.
They also may go down the path of, well, it's 3 months old, but let's use it anyway.
Yeah, the upcycling. So yeah, just talk me through how you would frame it to a restaurant with all these incredible options that they have today.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone in the food waste space, a solution that reduces the waste generated or that composts waste, all of that is fantastic, and I love that. Our mission is specifically centered around hunger. And so for us, we'll be happy if there's a waste eliminator. But if we're going and taking that food waste, solving a problem, and helping to solve a second problem, which is hunger in the United States, that's a really important part of our mission. And I think for a restaurant, let's be honest, a lot of times participation in things like this is based on the ethics of it, but also based on your ability to curate public relations and talk about the work that you're doing and help with that. And so for us, being able to say we are feeding hungry people, that's a really compelling kind of component of that you may not get quite at the same level if you if you were eliminating that waste or if you're composting it. And so that's, I think, a big part of it. For us, we're happy if it's not wasted.
Yeah.
But if we're able to feed hungry people, that's I mean, can't argue with that.
Selena or Angel, do I have time for one more? Okay, perfect. You kind of briefly touched on this, and it was briefly touched on in the last session with the food recovery. What's the story about integrating with point of sales? Can you talk us through what that vision is like and how you're expecting that is an unlock of opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a feature that we're building in partnership with the ReFed Catalytic Grant Fund, and so thanks again to ReFed for that. What we found was a barrier to participation to a lot of restaurants was because the environment is so fast-paced that when we first come in the door and start to pitch a restaurant manager, their main concern is, well, if I have to add steps that my staff have to follow, if I have to store food while we wait for pickups, if I have to have someone meet the volunteer to kind of do the exchange, like those are things that are going to distract from the rest of my business, which already operates on usually a pretty narrow margin and in a pretty high efficiency level. And so what we found was that because restaurants, most of them at this point, are doing their own kind of inventory management process, they're tracking food that they pay for that doesn't get sold. If we figured if we can work with that existing process and build on top of that, instead of adding to that, then that's going to streamline it and make it a much easier sell for us when we go in and talk to someone in the food service industry.
So if I was the restaurant operator, how do you pitch that to me?
Well, I don't know if you've been here for the last 10 minutes, but but that's where I'd start. I'd say, look, I know you have food waste. There's people who need food. We can bridge that gap with no cost to your business. And what you get out of that is significant tax incentives that I was told, because I'm not a tax professional, I can't speak to, but they're significant. And so you can recoup those costs. You can work with your community in a way that's very visible and very, very great for your staff even. And you can make progress towards your sustainability goals or net zero pledges or whatever happens to be in place. That's the quick version.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, judges. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, up next is Winston Wong, the CEO of Afterlife Ag. Winston, I'm going to talk about you for a second. I hope you're okay with that. All right. He grew up in a family of food distributors and restaurateurs and spent his weekends helping his family business with customer service, packing bags of food, and operations. And before building Afterlife Ag, Winston was the co-founder of Leap Venture Studio, focusing on investing in sustainable pet food startups, and led business development for Twitter's enterprise products, partnering with CPG and hospitality companies. Let's give it up for Winston.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm here to talk about the power of fungi and leveraging mushrooms as a way to divert food waste from going into landfills. So, I'm not going to go through a lot of these details, but one thing I found interesting just hearing the two other companies, we're actually operating in diverting food waste in different ways, right? So Jake obviously is on food waste prevention. Joe is focusing on the leftover food, the excess food. We're actually focused on food scraps. So with regards to restaurants and the hospitality industry, 80-85% of a lot of food waste that they create is actually from prep waste. So you're talking about like tomato peels, lemon wedges, things that you don't serve to your consumers and your guests. That always goes into landfills currently. So that's really a huge part of what we do, is to take all that waste that instead of going to landfill, we actually create a substrate out of it, essentially. We essentially breathe life into a food that is currently going to landfills. And how do we do this? So we collect food waste. We actually do food waste collections ourselves. And a huge reason behind that is because a lot of waste management companies nowadays, even though regulatory requires a lot of these restaurants and hospitality to separate their waste, a lot of the waste management companies still throw the food waste into landfills. And that's because they're incentivized by reducing their cost. Whereas our business model is not predicated on our lowest cost. Our business model is focused on creating value out of the food waste and doing more with that food waste. So that's how we make our model sustainable. So we turn that food waste into a substrate that we created over the last 2 to 3 years of our business. It's a proprietary substrate that we use to grow mushrooms out of. And mushrooms is one of the best natural decomposers in the world. It can break down food waste, it can break down oil, it can break down even plastics. It's really amazing. And essentially we grow fresh mushrooms to it that we sell back to these food companies. And we provide them with this circular model that they can serve to their guests. That makes our business work because we essentially give them something that's super valuable that they pay for that they would otherwise use for another distributor already. And then what's left over is what we call a spent mushroom substrate that has been colonized with mycelium, which is super healthy for soil health. It's got great water retention properties, and it can help replenish topsoil. So we actually donate a lot of that to farmers, currently working with a few farmers within the regional New York State area. They're starting to use that as a way to add to their compost, to their soil, and they're gonna start growing new produce out of it. So the next part of our model is to start selling their produce back to the same customers that give us their waste. Really generates a double circular model, if you will. And we're really trying to think about this as a circular farming and really push what's possible to do circular farming and sustainable farming even further. Next, so here you can see some of the stuff that some of our restaurant customers actually do with our waste. One thing that differentiates us against other waste management companies is we weigh every single toter that we collect. That doesn't happen anywhere. We give that report daily to our customers. We work with them every quarter to reduce that further. That's really, really important for our mission. And because we get these raw materials for free, essentially, or paid for, our cost is actually lower in growing these mushrooms, which means that we can also pass on these savings back to our restaurant customers. And then lastly, we're actively growing some very unique species. We're cultivating our own species. We're trying to crossbreed, really just pushing ourselves out there to be, the sustainable circular mushroom company there is out there that uses food waste. So some of our customers, if you're based in New York City, we work with a lot of customers. Go visit them, both Michelin star restaurants to pizza, restaurants as well. We've been selling out every week over the last 12 to 18 months. Our retention is super high. We've only lost one customer because that restaurant shut down, but they introduced us to more customers. So really, restaurants really love what we do because it's the first time they actually get something back out of their food waste. They've never actually seen their food waste go somewhere useful, and this is the first time they're actually getting something back. So we're excited to continue to grow, and we're creating and building out a new farm as well, and we'll be building that by the end of this year to be a scaled farm in 2024. Let's see. Oh, I think this is actually not my slides. That's okay. I'm going to stop there. That's pretty much it. So basically, my ask actually is if you know any restaurants, hospitality companies, we're growing, so please introduce. Would love to connect with anyone that cares about sustainability, uses mushrooms on their menu. I would encourage everyone to use mushrooms on their menu because it's a great plant-based food. Great for your brain health, great for nutrition, so definitely use that. And then also we're looking to start creating extracts out of our leftover mushrooms as well, so that nothing goes to waste. So if you're working with a CPG companies that wants to build a supplement product, implement extracts into your CPG company, I would love to talk to you as well. So thank you very much.
Very, very interesting and unique. I've got a few questions. Your business model, you make money by selling the mushrooms, is that it?
Yeah, so we actually get paid to collect the food waste as well.
Oh, you get paid to collect the food waste?
A lot of these commercial companies would pay a waste hauler, so they would rather pay us instead because they know it's going somewhere good. And then in return, we would actually give them mushrooms as well. We would sell the mushrooms at a comparable rate to what they would pay to a food distributor so that they're not actually paying anything extra to do good. Yeah.
And then this isn't all the food waste, it's just the scraps. So do they have to separately separate them out, and does that create an issue in getting them to agree to do this?
Yeah, so in New York City, there's actually already regulations that forces you to, it's mandatory to separate out food waste, especially at restaurants. But how it usually works is when a chef is prepping their meals anyways, when they chop stuff, when they prepare stuff, they already have a separate container that they usually put food waste in. So it's just part of their natural process as part of their preparation, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have two questions now. First of all, what other vegetables could this be applied to? I know mushrooms was the consideration, but as a non-technical folk with all the work that goes in the background, do you think this could be extended into mushrooms? Because I know I have some friends who are like, they just do not love mushrooms. They're just, I know, they're just
They just
weird,
don't know how
they're
to
just
cook
weird
them,
people. They're missing out on mushrooms. So if they don't like mushrooms, so have you, like, is it possible to extend this past mushrooms?
Yeah, it's the answer at a high level is no, because mushroom is what is digesting the food waste and decomposing the food waste at the same time. So other plants require a ton of energy, a ton of light, and all that stuff. Mushrooms is one of the rare organisms that doesn't need a lot of light to grow, so which means it's a lot more cost efficient to grow and cost effective. So that's why we can make the model work. 'Cause otherwise, other vegetable would just take a long time. Yeah.
Cool. And then I could tell, obviously, in New York, but any other markets that you're targeting and hoping to expand into? Hopefully, this entire group can kind of go back to their respective places and spread the word.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say our dream, to be honest, is to partner with a large grocery store distributor or anyone that generates a lot of food and build with them, co-partnership, co-locate with them, utilize their food waste while build a mushroom farm directly next to where their warehouse is. It reduces the amount of time that you need to ship the mushrooms across the country. I don't know whether you know this, but 65% of mushrooms are grown in Pennsylvania in this country, so it gets shipped all across the country. So if we could build local, hyper-local mushrooms farms, co-locating with all the distribution, we can use their waste, we can give the mushrooms our local fresh, that reduces the time to distribute, and we all win together. I mean, it reduces and prevents food waste as well. So that would be the ideal dream. So if you know anyone like that, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so this is perfect because you stepped into my follow-up question. Let's now assume that this goes really well. Yeah. Tomorrow you get so many calls and emails. Is there a consideration for like a scaling issue where Afterlife is constrained by the number of scraps that can come at one point? So just talk us through if there is that scaling breaking point, or if this is like a linear, just the more you guys just consume scraps and output
so
linearly.
the ratio, it's around 1-to-1. So 1 pound of food waste generates we can grow 1 pound of mushrooms from it. So it's pretty efficient that way from a biological efficiency perspective. There is obviously a lot more food waste than there is people consuming mushrooms in this country. So we can only solve a part of the problem.
Yeah.
But I do think that the amount of things that you can do with mushrooms is growing. As I said, supplements, people are eating a lot of that now. So it doesn't have to be just like your daily meals, but you can do a lot with it as well. Yeah.
And last one, Angela, one more. Okay, last one. Talk me through the biggest objection that you oftentimes hear from restaurant operators and how you either deflect it or kind of win them over.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what we've found is a lot of restaurateurs genuinely care about food waste, because if you grow up in the food world, you naturally learn to want to not waste food. So our problem is not necessarily getting the waste or people wanting to use our mushrooms, because I think they want to support local farmers too. I think a lot of the problems is sometimes generally changing the operations. So sometimes getting them to compost will take a little longer than what we would like it to. But we don't have any problems generally getting them to buy our mushrooms, because our mushrooms are local, so it's super high quality. It's more just changing the behavior. But we do that and overcome that by really engaging with their team, because the younger generation cares about it a lot more now. So even if the owners don't care about it, the employees do. And I've naturally seen a lot of people come to me afterwards and say, oh, I've left that restaurant to go to this restaurant because this restaurant cares more about what I care about, and they want to work with us that way. So I think that education and that engagement is really important going forward. Yeah.
Step off stage, they're going to deliberate, and now I'd love to open the floor to a Q&A with all of you. So there is a mic in the center of the room. Feel free to come up and ask our presenters any questions you might have.
question's for Winston. I was wondering, since you're using the food waste to create a substrate for edible produce, is there any sort of feedstock restrictions? Like, can you take expired food, et cetera, things that are not food quality?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have tested and experimented with different types of food. The way that mushrooms grow, generally, depending on the species of mushroom as well, it's not to get too technical, but the carbon-nitrogen ratio is what's important to be able to get good yields. So, we've tested with food that are super fresh all the way to rotten food as well. I think when you go to more rotten food that's been around for 1 week plus, that's just sitting there, it does become slightly harder because microbes is coming in a little bit more. So the yields is generally not as high. But we sterilize everything, so we kill off most microbes when we can. It's just the ingredients break down and the nutrients break down from the food waste itself already makes it slightly harder for the mushrooms to digest, so we do see a slight difference. So we generally do try to pick up pretty regularly every day. We do pickups every day so that most of the food scraps that we get are pretty fresh, yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Heidi. I work for Chartwell's Higher Education, which just does food service for colleges and universities. I'm stationed at University of Minnesota, so I was wondering for you, Afterlife, how likely would it be for example, if the University of Minnesota wanted to start utilizing this, how quick would it happen to get a farm over there and then actually be able to purchase local mushrooms?
Yeah, there's a way to do it where you can hack it together, and we can help you do that to build a pilot farm. Building a farm is not, let me rephrase that. I think, the way that we want to do it is obviously as cost effective as possible so that we try and make a business model work. So we do have equipment that we automate, and it generally costs around $1.5 million in total to build an entirely automated farm. But there are ways to do it locally, and Minnesota is great state for agriculture. So we would love to be there. So definitely we can chat afterwards about how to build something over there. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for the panel. This is Zeynep Özkan. I work for the Ministry of Agriculture in Turkey. I have a question to the food rescue. I see that you are getting donations from the restaurant and fresh food, sometimes meat products, I guess, very important, and safety regulations should be given attention to that. So how do you cope with it? And then who will be responsible if there will be some food poisoning in the beneficiaries? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So one of the beauties of our model is that because we do small-scale donations and we do volunteer pickups, the time that actually takes for food to get from point A to point B is usually less than 10 or 20 minutes. So that means that the time that we're actually handling it and transitioning it from one point to another is quite short, which is a huge value to us. And then I would also say that because of the Good Samaritan Act, there's very limited liability for any sort of food that has to be checked before it gets actually distributed. And all of our receiving agencies are vetted and have their own safety processes to make sure that any food that they get is being reviewed and checked properly before it actually goes out to somebody. Thank you for your question.
This is another question for you, Joe. And it's still a little half-baked. But I work out in California where food recovery is mandatory. And one thing that we're seeing is that governments are responsible to make sure food is all surplus food that can be recovered from regulated businesses is recovered. And many organizations, even though they can offer free pickups to businesses, the costs don't disappear. They're just borne by volunteers or the nonprofits. And we're concerned that that's not going to be long-term sustainable. Is that something that you've seen an issue with, or, I mean, especially since you're scaling across so many different parts of the country? What does that look like through your whole network?
Yeah, so as you kind of saw in the video, and this is I explain this to people, and it's always surprising to folks, but our volunteers drive their personal vehicles to go pick up food. So they drive their SUV, minivan, truck, whatever it is. They drive straight to the location, they pick it up, they go drop it off immediately. So that's not a cost that we really look at. It's part of what the volunteers give us. And it seems like that might be a little bit of an ask, like to ask somebody to go drive, use their personal time, use their personal vehicle. But we have 29,000 volunteers who have signed up to do this. And I grew up in Idaho. 29,000 people would be like a bustling metropolis. So the expanse of the network is really impressive. And it kind of confirms the point that people want to do this. People learn about it, they care about it. Hunger is such a visceral, obvious issue. You don't have to explain it to anyone. They understand what that issue is. And so getting volunteers to do this has been, like I said, that's not really a bottleneck that we look at. And it doesn't cost us anything in our model.
Just to follow up to that, in your experience building out the organization, has there ever been talks about alternatives to, like I'm very pro-volunteer as well. Like they're the ones boots on the ground making this work happen. But are there other opportunity or other options to spread the cost out? Like is this the food recovery system that is the one that we want, built by volunteers, relying on volunteers?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a fair question. And I will say that one of the things I think that's really beautiful about our model, and you'll probably get this from other talks you go to today, is that assessing kind of the impact and the mechanics of a food ecosystem are incredibly difficult. It's incredibly complex. And each kind of area, if you take a city like Detroit, they have their own food ecosystem. So they have certain waste regulations. They have a population that's either more food insecure or less insecure. They have people who are more likely to become volunteers versus less likely. And one thing that our model does really well is that despite the fact that we have an operation that gets replicated in many locations, kind of like a franchise model, we've decentralized it so that our site directors have a ton of freedom to kind of customize what they do to their space. So when you do that, you end up with 41 sites in 26 different states, and each of those sites is made up of food donors who are local to that community, receiving agencies that are serving that community, and people who are members of that community, from the top of the organization to the bottom. And so that enables them to make their own decisions about what's going to work best for them, and it gives us a lot of heartburn from the administrative level, but it also gives us the opportunity to look at each of these sites as their own kind of experimentational area. We can see what they're doing that works. We can look at the demographics of that community and identify why that operation works, and then we can fold that into our kind of base model operation.
That's fascinating, and thank you.
Thank you.
This is a two-part question, one for Afterlife and one for Connected Fresh. I'll start with the latter. How does your particular solution sort of balance the energy, sort of the cost, and sort of reduce that at the operation level? And are there any sort of like specific features, and I'm sorry if I missed this or cut you off with timing, that can sort of help operations sort of reduce their energy costs? That's my number one, and I'll let you answer.
Cool. No worries about cutting me off. I think 4.5 minutes is a little different this time of year. So when we talk about energy consumption, right, we're talking about like an energy consumption monitor, right? And this will just go, it opens up here, you clamp it around the wire, and now it's reading the throughput, right? But that in itself, right, you can take, everyone's looking at, what does your utility bill say? But it gives you a dollar amount for the entire thing. You're not able to section that off by different assets or different pieces of equipment, right? Being able to identify what that energy usage is allows you to, through machine learning for us, we're able to predict when something is an anomaly and something is going wrong, something, it's either driving up your utility bill, it's signaling early failure of that asset, right? But then on the other side, it also lets you just understand how assets are being used across your organization, right? Can you train your staff better to keep doors closed, right? Can you do things like that where it's going to reduce the energy spend of the refrigerator? And then the second part of that is, right, if you have a temperature sensor in a refrigerator and it says it's 38 degrees and that's 2 thumbs up, you think you're done, right? But silently, it can be overworking to be able to get there. And those are the types of things when we say being proactive instead of reactive, we want to focus on, if you're able to identify that issue before it gets to a critical point where people need to immediately respond to it, if you could just make it a part of your normal operations, that is a completely changed game, and one that normally a lot of times does involve a significant amount of food waste in the process.
Thank you. And for Winston, I'm curious what happens to the substrate after it's been used.
Yeah, so we currently donate it to various parks and gardens across New York City. So Governor's Island was using it to replace the topsoil, to add microbes to their soil, because they're on the coast, so it gets eroded very quickly. So they wanted to put some spent mushroom substrate back in there to replace it, and also help prevent water from being washed away again, because the mycelium can help do that. But as I mentioned earlier, we're also trying to work with some farmers to help them grow produce out of it, so that we can also help them distribute as well later on. So that's where we will expand, hopefully, our business model to include other types of produce by using the spent mushroom substrate. So we're testing that currently, so we'll see what happens, yeah.
Thank you both so much.
I'm going off script for a second. Before we announce the winner, we have a wide range of solution providers. We have a point of sale system. We have an amazing funder. Maybe before we announce this winner, I'd love to hear from each of you. Like, what's one thing you want the audience to walk away from this session as it relates to solutions for food waste in restaurants? What's one thing you want them to know?
I'll start. I think it's really important to not discount the effort and the care people are willing to put into an issue like this. I think especially one that hits people so close to home. So I think if that's one thing I would have people take away, is put some faith in your fellow man. We've got big issues because of what we've been doing, but we're the source of those issues. And I think that human beings have to be the source of the solutions to those issues.
So my answer to that would actually be expanding on your question originally, right, which had to do with, how is it different, right? For us, when you think about temperature monitoring, right, I'm ignoring everything else, but if you just think of temperature monitoring, there's tons of different solutions out there that say temperature monitoring, right? But it's not necessarily a solution that's either going to be advanced and actually is going to give you more advanced insights, or it's not going to be one that, most importantly, lets you expand in the future. So like, what we're trying to get out there, even if people don't go with us, right, we want you to know that, hey, temperature may be the focus of what you're looking at today to solve, but do you have a system in place that allows you to be able to expand at a later date, to be able to solve business challenges later without then introducing another platform for another thing, another login, all this kind of stuff, right? So that portion of it, just the educational element of it, we always get a lot of, out of having conversations with people like you guys, right? So if that's ever something that we can help with, of just, what are the things I should even consider, right? Because we may not be the solution for what you're looking for, but we just want people to know what questions they should be asking.
Yeah, I guess for me, because I grew up in a family of restaurateurs as well. My family had restaurants. I would say, for me, we all go out to restaurants, so I would definitely suggest everyone, like, restaurants are the lifeblood of bringing people together. We're spending money there. They rely on us to be able to support them. It's a very tough business, low margin business, as you say. So I would say definitely encourage them to really think about, new ways of thinking about sustainability and food waste, and really putting in your dollar, your hard-earning dollars, to supporting restaurants that are doing that, because I think that will encourage and change their behavior as to how they think about these things as well, because they rely on us as well. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Cool. I'm just going to say a couple words before my fellow judge announces. First of all, I want to thank all the panelists here and actually ReFed for putting this together. Just a little bit of context as to why we're all here. 2 years ago when we first started out on this like food waste journey, we didn't know what we were up against as a software point of sale company. All we did know is that we wanted to help. And as we started going through this experience, we knew that we could do something for our restaurants with software, but when we started out this social impact journey, we wanted to make a dent in the entire restaurant industry. And ReFed was such an incredible partner, and I thank my colleagues, Shayna and Michelle, who were the ones that kind of put together this $1 million catalytic grant to surface up these incredible solutions, but then also push the entire industry forward. And so I'm happy now, if I could go back 2 years ago and say, wow, look at where we are, and like we're giving real attention to our restaurants. I'm really proud, and I'm very excited about the next several years collaborating with all of you guys. And so thank you for allowing us into this space. Thank you for participating with us, and I'm so incredibly excited about the future.
Okay, and the winner is, interestingly, we were in total agreement. This wasn't so easy. There are certain criteria, and the companies are very, very different on those criteria. Connected Fresh is addressing a problem that restaurants really want to deal with. When I started trying to sell temperature sensors to restaurants 10 years ago, restaurants are required, there's something called hazard reporting for food safety. They have to record temperatures 4 times a day. 90-some-odd% of the restaurants manage to record the temperature at 8 o'clock, noon, 4 p.m., and 8 p.m. By 8 in the morning without benefit of a temp sensor. It was really rather amazing. But now they really want to have something. I'm not making that up. There was a name for that. But times have changed, and they really want to do it. Food rescue is, they probably have the highest benefit because they're reducing food waste and helping people that haven't that need the food. And Afterlife Ag, what we concluded, to be honest, and we awarded to Afterlife Ag, they've created something new and unique and different, much less competition. There's a lot of competition for both of the other players. Really, this sounds really interesting and exciting as a new way of addressing the food waste issue. So, congratulations.
Congratulations, congratulations. Again, let's give them all another big round of applause. Great work. Be sure to connect with all of them after this session. And I want to thank all of you for being here with us and joining us for the very first Solution Provider Showcase. Next up, we do have our main stage session upstairs, leaning in on business solutions in the ballroom. So we'll see you all over there. Thanks again.